So in the last video, I talked about building a portfolio that revolves around a specific niche that I've chosen for myself. And the niche that I've chosen is beauty and cosmetics. I'll get into the reason in another video. What I did was I've already made renders in the past on this specific niche due to how popular those kind of designs were. So what I did was I added 2 more videos and 1 image to back up my portfolio. And in terms of views and impression, they did actually quite well, as I had around 700 views on one of the videos and around 750 impressions on my profile, which was a great news for me. So after all of this, I proceeded to start messaging brands, and the goal was simple. Basically, what I had to do was find a brand that aligns with my niche, of course, look for a problem they have or have difficulty solving, and then offer them a solution to those problems. You see, that might sound simple, but it is far from easy. You see, after DMing over 50 brands on Instagram and emailing a couple few, I had 0 responses in about 3 weeks of messaging clients and brands following these 3 steps that I've mentioned. As I was getting impatient, I asked an expert in this same field who is also a 3D artist. I asked him for opinions and advice and further steps to take forward, and he replied, just DM them again. So with that, I started my second wave of messages and followed back on all the DMs and emails that I have sent. And after a few days of doing that, something crazy happened. Some brands were replying, and I can't tell you how this feels. Getting a single response back felt like a win because of the sheer amount of efforts that I have put into it already. And though most of them were not saying yes, they were actually expressing their disinterest in any collaborations. Finally, I got 2 replies, and one of them was from a brand which I will reveal later in this video, and the other was from a client which I had not even DM'd in the first place. This client actually came from Upwork. What they wanted was simple, easy enough. They wanted an animation of their products, both the client and the brand. Now, the client wanted a 360-degree animation of a product that I had to conceptualize myself, and 2 rendered images of that product. And the brand, on the other hand, wanted me to make them basically a free video because they were not willing to take the risk of investing in something they were not sure would work out. So with that, one of the work was paid for and the other had a potential of becoming something huge in the future. So of course I had to make a decision on which to prioritize when I started working on this project. Immediately I started to work on the brand's product, because I trusted myself enough to deliver both projects on time and with perfection. Of course, they had to be to the client or to the brand's taste. So I got to work. I had no further resources to work with than the images on their page, so I used that. What I would go on to do was fairly simple: make a texture, model the entire product, design a label from scratch, and texture the label onto the product. Easy. Now with all of those done, it was time to animate. So after 2 weeks of solitary confinement, it was finally ready, and to be honest, I couldn't be happier to share my work. And on the 20th of June, I messaged them and delivered the video, and that was mistake number 1. Then after they replied and they said thank you, of course, and told me they would have an internal discussion, and get back to me. 3 days later, I messaged them back for confirmation and I got no responses back. And that's when I realized my second mistake, which is style. You see, every individual brand has their own unique, special style that is true to them and shows exactly how they see their product or the service they offer. Take a brand like Red Bull, for instance. Red Bull only shows high adrenaline, action-packed, fast-paced activities, and that is strongly linked with what they choose to sell, which is energy drinks, and that gives you a sense of what they want you to feel when you take their product. Now, this is called style, and I did not take this into consideration when I was making the video. You see, I just wanted to make something that looked cool or presentable enough to show to the brand. I didn't really take into consideration if it actually suits their intended purpose or if it suits what they believe in. I discovered this after the video had been sent, so that was my second mistake. And at this point in time, I realized I had a project, a paid project I haven't even started working on. So with about 5 days left on my about 5 days left to the deadline, I reviewed the requirements and I knew exactly what to do. I followed each step to the T, or to the best of my abilities, and came up with this. Now, this was not bad for something I made in 5 days, and actually was not far from what you would expect from the details I was given. Long story short, the client was not too happy with the first draft, and this was already past the deadline, and the deadline date was on the 25th of June. Now, after a long back and forth of revisions and failed attempts, the client finally gave me an actual reference to follow. Now I have two options. One, which is to adapt the reference to what I already had or what I have been following the client up with, or build the whole thing from scratch and make it look exactly like the reference, right? So if you've ever heard the saying, "Still like an artist," you'd realize why I chose to go with number one, the option one. So what I basically did was take out the key factor or an area that the client specifically emphasized the most, which was the body of the product itself. This is what I imagined the client wanted when he gave me the reference. After I made the necessary changes, I finally sent them to the client, and he was not happy at all. So I was left with no other choice but to go with the second option, which is to build the whole thing from scratch, and with just a few days left, or I gave myself a few days to complete it. And with the few days I gave myself to complete it, it was finally done. So now, after I've done that, this is now very, very similar to the reference. In fact, it's almost the same.
They're the same picture.
So I sent this to the client, and after a few days I got no responses. And now I thought that was it. I thought that was the end of the project. Submitted it to the escrow service, and I thought it was finally over. Then on the 25th of July, I got this message. One 360-degree animation and two still images. Tell me how much you think this is worth in the comment section. Peace. Catch you guys in the next one.